West Virginia has a big game coming up against the Auburn Tigers as part of the Big 12 SEC Challenge, a game that the Mountaineers have not fared well in. Will their luck change this year? Well, Mountaineer Paul and I are here to give you our thoughts and our breakdown for the upcoming game right after the intro. What is going on, Mountaineer Hoops fans? Welcome into Hoops from the Hills, your go-to channel for West Virginia Mountaineers basketball. This is Couz, and I'm here with Mountaineer Paul, and we present to you
Hoops from the Hills.
what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, out there in Mountaineer Hoops land. As you can see, our brand new background with Tonka himself, Jimmy Bell. We welcome you to another episode of Hoops from the Hills. We're going to break down the Auburn game for you. Real quick, Paul, what are your initial thoughts on this game?
Could be an ugly game. Defensive battle, possibly. Seems like neither team has shot it well. Outside of last week for us, neither team shoots it too well. Both teams have struggled at the line at times. But I think Bob Huggins will be in heaven and probably be a defensive battle, maybe ugly. So
Yeah,
Auburn's a pretty good team. We're going to talk about that schedule a little bit. Maybe have some conversations about whether we can criticize that strength of schedule or not. It certainly does not compare to ours.
absolutely
That's
not.
for sure.
Nope, it does not. And Auburn, I mean, they're ranked right now, ranked in the top 15, but they just lost Texas A&M, so they're coming off a loss, which could make this a bad spot for the Mountaineers because Auburn could come into this game basically pissed off and motivated to play. So they could come into Morgantown with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. But when you look at Auburn's 15th ranking and their record of 16-4, I think it could be a little misleading because when you look at who they played, I mean, their last 8 games, Georgia, who they lost to, by the way,
Yeah,
Arkansas,
loss.
that's a good win. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, and then they lost to an unranked Texas A&M. So that's just their last 8. And then you go before that at their non-conference schedule.
It was a cream puff.
Colgate, Memphis, who they lost to, Georgia State, USC, who they lost to, Washington, and Florida. Florida's in conference, but that was their first conference game, and they only beat Florida by 3, a team that West Virginia trounced earlier in the season. So I really think Auburn, I'm not going to say they're not a bad team, but I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. And I think West Virginia has a really good chance to win the game, which shows why ESPN does have West Virginia as a heavy favorite in this game.
Heavy.
Yeah, like 66% chance to win heavy. Mountaineer Nation should be loud. Hopefully it'll be a sold out game. I'm not sure. Hopefully the fan base will still be motivated to show up and show out. We'll see.
I think they will.
So that'll definitely be a big plus. But we all know that West Virginia in the past has struggled in these SEC challenge games. For whatever reason, they don't seem to get up for these games like they do Big 12 games. So hopefully that won't be the case here because Auburn is very capable of winning this game. Because there are some matchups there that kind of worry me a little bit, namely because they like to put their opponents on the free throw line. Auburn does, and we know West Virginia has been up and down with their free throw shooting. They shot 80% against Texas Tech, but then there have been weeks they shot about 50%. So, which team's going to show up? If the 50% team shows up, it could be a long night or a long day, I should say.
And especially if Kedrian Johnson doesn't play, who's been very consistent from the line for us. Obviously, so has Joe, who plays in that same role. But Katie's another player on the floor for us that we can usually count on to knock down 2 shots from the line if he gets that opportunity. It's really, when you think about it, it's Eric, it's Joe, and it's Keedy. And Trey even misses. He hasn't even been that great from the line, you know. So we're already down a player that shoots well from there.
Right.
Could be a strategy for Bruce Pearl. And look, we were just talking before we got on camera here. They play this huge rotation. A strategy they can employ is we'll just throw guys at you. You got fouls to give. Put you on the line. That's your weakness. Let's say he sends 7 through 10 at us on the bench because we counted they go 10 deep. We're just going to hack you guys, and we're going to put Jimmy Bell, we're going to put Muhammad Wagi on the line. We're going to make those guys beat us.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to in football when you make a certain quarterback either run or pass to beat you.
Right.
It's a good strategy,
Yeah,
actually.
but West Virginia could, but on the other side of that, West Virginia could actually do something similar because we know they throw 9-10 guys at you too. And oh, by the way, Auburn's not a very good free throw shooting team either. So
Right.
I mean, they're okay. They're not terrible. I think they shoot in the 60% range, 69% range, somewhere in there. They're not bad, but they're not great either. So they could have an off night. So West Virginia could potentially employ that same strategy. But you mentioned Keedy earlier. Another reason I think Keedy could be critical is, we've heard Huggins talk about how great of an on-ball defender he is. Auburn has a point guard or a guard named Wendell Green, who he's essentially their top scorer, 13.9 a game, one of their top two players in my opinion. Keedy would be potentially a matchup problem for him because he's only 5'11". Keedy's got that length. They can put him on the ball on this guy and really make his night hard and try to minimize his scoring. And I think without Keedy, now Joe's a good defender in his own right, but I'm not sure he's at Keedy's level just yet. So it'll be interesting to see how Keedy's health plays a role in this and if he's healthy for this game.
Agreed. I think Joe will be up to the task, but it's hard to replace Skeeter in either way.
It is.
You'd like to be able to have both of them, especially if Auburn does go to this tactic of fouling. Bob Huggins can just put his best free throw lineup on the floor. Well, it makes it more difficult without Keegreen, and it knocks us out of ball handler, which we're very poor at as well.
Right. And another matchup to be on the lookout for is Auburn's other top player, arguably the best player, Johnny Broome. Johnny Broome's also averaging about 13 a game. And oh, by the way, he also averages 8.5 rebounds and almost 3 blocks a game, like 2.7 blocks a game. And he's 6'10". So he could be a matchup problem for West Virginia. If you put Jimmy Bell on him, he's probably going to be quicker than Jimmy, so I'm not sure Jimmy can stay with him from a quickness and athleticism perspective. And if and Trey could be a matchup problem from a size and weight perspective. So who do you put on this guy to slow him down? Do you put Jimmy on him? Do you put Trey on him? What do you think, Paul?
I think you got to start with Jimmy and see how he does, because he's our best. Jimmy had 6 offensive rebounds. He didn't do much else the other day. He had 6 offensive rebounds last week or last game. So he's very valuable to have on the floor if we can get him on the floor. He gives us that because especially if we're shooting it poorly, he gives us second chance opportunities. So you got to give him the first swing at it. Then after that, you start going through your rotation, and hopefully, I would move on to probably James second. If Jimmy struggles, he's earned that. Certainly, Bob has said in press conferences that the only person that could move Jimmy was James. So if he's got that kind of hind end behind him, maybe he's the guy. Or if not, we know he's fleet of foot enough and gets up off the floor quick enough to guard somebody explosive.
Right.
So he's kind of your happy medium for that.
Yeah, agreed. And the one thing I mentioned, Broome was blocked shots. As a team, Auburn's blocking over 6 shots a game. So that could be a potential problem for West Virginia. But, Florida's also doing the same thing, and we were able to handle that when we played them earlier in the year. So I'm not that concerned about it. But it is something to be on the lookout for, is their ability to block shots, because they've just got so many bigs, man. They've got Broome, plus they've got a couple other guys under there that can really.
Well, they've got a 5-star player that is very talented, but just because Broome is so good, isn't playing as much.
Right, absolutely. So those are kind of the matchups, in my opinion, that you need to look out for. Who they put on Broome? Is it Jimmy? Is it James? Is it Trey? And then also the point guard with Wendell Green and Keedy or Joe. That could be an interesting matchup too. And I want to see how Eric responds. Eric, even though he didn't shoot the ball real well last game, he still had 10 points, or double-digit points. I think it was 10, and he also had 10 rebounds. So he had a good game, and he had several assists. Eric was dishing the ball really well. He had a pretty decent game. He had too many turnovers and made some really weird uh weird plays.
Trying to be flashy.
Yeah, but he also did some really good things too. If he can get his shot back and get his confidence going again, I
Be a
think
boon.
absolutely it would, and I think it would. I'll be honest with you. I think it would give the whole team a boon, and I think it would really elevate the team to another level, back closer to back what they were in the beginning of the season. Especially if
We were feeding off of him.
absolutely, especially if you can continue to get the production you've gotten off Seth and coming off the bench, and then you got what Okonkwo started to do. If those guys can continue that, and which it's yet to be determined, can they continue that being young guys? If they can continue that coming off the bench, Eric get his game back, Kedry can get healthy. If Emmett, I don't know what's going on with Emmett, if it's physical thing with his knee, if it's something mental and confidence,
I don't know.
whatever it is. If these guys can get back to where they were early in the season, mentally and physically, I really think this team has a shot to make a run here late in the season. But I'm not getting my hopes up too high because, I'm done after the TCU win and it bit me in the butt. So
Yeah, we win this game and then we get this 5-game stretch, 4-game stretch. We're entering into the gauntlet. We haven't even really played the gauntlet yet. We're getting ready to step into it. Just look at the next 5 games if you get time for West Virginia.
Absolutely.
There's a number beside every team that we play. I think besides one, 4 of the 5 teams are ranked, if I'm not mistaken. So, as is life in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean you've got TCU. Obviously, we got the Auburn game. They're 15th. We have to go to TCU, who's going to have revenge on their mind. They're 11th in the country. Then we welcome Oklahoma to Morgantown. They're unranked. Should be a win, but we all know, we should have beaten them out their place too when we didn't. You've got Iowa State coming to Morgantown after that, who's ranked 12th in the country. Then West Virginia has to go to 10th ranked Texas. And then, oh, by the way, then they have to go to 17th ranked Baylor on a Saturday, Monday trip. To Texas on Saturday, to Baylor on Monday, 2 top 20 teams. Just an absolute gauntlet, man. Absolute gauntlet of a schedule. So in West Virginia, in order to get to that 18-win mark that you and I predicted at the beginning of the year, or at least I did, they have to win 6 of their next 10 games.
Yep.
And with that schedule, man, it's going to be a really hard road. It's possible, and they can do it. But, man, the odds are against them. I'll just be honest with you. When you look at that schedule, the odds are against them.
Well, they have to win Saturday as a must-win game.
Yeah.
I hate to call anything a must-win game with 10 games to go. Auburn is a must-win game. It's going to be a quad, probably. It's going to be a quad 1 victory. Obviously, they're ranked 15th. I don't know. I mean, you just start to look at that schedule, and to get to 17 or 18 wins, which some people say 17, it starts to, especially if you lose to Auburn, that number starts to really dwindle of teams you feel confident about this team winning against. So, unless they revert back to who they were, then they can beat anybody in the conference. I truly believe that. If they could shoot it, even at 70% the clip they were earlier in the year, because that was just, come on, guys. We all know, we even though we hoped, we were shooting it like that Duke team that we played back in the 2010 Final Four. Mm-hmm. That's how well we were shooting at times. We had a 70% half. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It just
wasn't sustainable. So, that wasn't sustainable.
No, it was just hot. We were just hot. We've got like 3 or 4 streaky shooters on this team. Eric's a streaky shooter, Seth's a streaky shooter, Emmett's a streaky shooter, and so is Trey. So when you've got 4 streaky shooters, you want to have at least 50% or 2 of those guys going at one time, not all 4 at once. So when they fall off, there's nobody to shoot the ball anymore. Throw it to Jimmy every time.
And that's what happened, man. They all 4 did fall off. And Eric still hasn't got his shot back yet. Seth kind of has. Emmett still hasn't. Really, right now, Seth's the only guy shooting the ball. Joe's had his moments, but
I don't include Joe. He's been so consistent.
Yeah, but really, Seth, of those guys, Seth's really the only one hitting the shots on a consistent basis. That's why he's so critical to this team right now, because they've got to have his scoring especially off the bench. They've got to have that scoring, man. So I think it's critical that he get more minutes going forward, especially uh, assuming Eric doesn't, turn his shooting around. But if you can get both those guys going, it's a huge bonus.
Agreed.
But real quick, Paul, you want to do a score prediction?
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to go with West Virginia 74, Auburn 66.
That's a good pick. West Virginia's averaging 77 a game. Auburn's averaging 72 a game. Auburn's given up 63.4 a game. West Virginia's given up 69 almost. So,
I was right in there, wasn't
yeah, you were. I'm going to say I don't think it gets in the 80s because Auburn's a good defensive team.
I? If it gets in the 80s, that favors us.
Yeah, but I just don't see that happening because I think Auburn's too good defensively. So I do think it stays in the high 60s, 70s range.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go West Virginia 73, Auburn 69.
Probably be a good game to take the under in as well, I would
Yeah,
say.
which hasn't come out yet, by the way. For those of you wondering, the odds, the Vegas odds, and all that have not come out yet. They'll probably come out. We're recording this on Friday. It'll probably come out later today, well, it should be later today because the game's at noon tomorrow. So odds should come
Right.
out today sometime, but they're not out as of the recording of this video. But with that being said, guys, that's really all we got for you. Paul, you got anything else you want to add real quick before we leave?
Let's go Mountaineers. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video. Visit Couz's Corner and Mountaineer Paul Talk Football.
Absolutely. Hit us up there. Hit us up on Twitter at Couz206 and at Paul Mountaineer. We love to interact with you there. But with that being said, this show is over. We're out.